Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to First Lady Ministries. My name is Leroy Lopez, and today we have a special treat for you. Today, I'll actually be interviewing First Lady Garcia. She has an amazing testimony that she wants to share, and I think that a lot of people are going to be touched by it. I think that that's a very powerful message. So to introduce you, First Lady Garcia, please.
Hello, everybody. Oh, thank you, Leroy. I appreciate you. This is a different, turn of events, right?
Yes.
I'm always the one doing the interviewing, but today we wanted to do something different, turn the camera on me. Last time we spoke, God had called me to start to share my testimony. And I asked my cousin Leroy if he would interview me and give him the task, and he said yes, so go for it.
Thank you for that introduction.
Absolutely.
So why testimonies? First of all, I know that's your
something we've been running with right now.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Why testimonies?
Why testimonies? One of the definitions to testimony is story of salvation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, anybody can sit down with you and argue scripture, but one thing they cannot argue with you is about your very own story. And can no one tell your story better than you?
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So, what is it about your story that you feel so compelled to tell the world about? I mean, what is it that makes you want to just let it out?
Let it out. Well, I mean, it's not so much that it's unique, because I am not the only preacher's daughter. I'm not the only one that comes from a Christian background. I'm not the only one that comes from a pastoral home. But I am bold enough. God has put in me what it takes to have gone through all of those things, because we're going to cover a lot of aspects. And you have to have, I think, a certain kind of crazy to be able to have gone through all of those things and stand up on a worldwide platform and say, look what I've been through.
Yeah.
And I'm here to share it with you.
So the testimony starts with when you were 5 years old. Mm-hmm. Will you touch on that?
Of course. When I was 5 years old, that's when my family came to the Lord. My father was actually in prison. He had been given something like a 5-year sentence, and it was me and my two older brothers who my parents had at the time. There's 5 of us now, yes. But at that time there was only 3 of us. It was me, my 2 older brothers, and my father had gotten into some trouble, and he got sentenced, and he went off to prison. But when he was in prison, a prison came in, and the very first night that he got to his cell, this preacher came by, knocked on his cell, and said to him, listen, you're already in here. You might as well make the best of it. Tonight we're having a prayer service, and I want to come up by and invite you. And I remember my father saying, I was already there. I decided, let me make the best of it. Let me make my time just kind of roll out. And he went to the prayer service that night, and he gave his life to the Lord. And the amazing thing about that is that within 3 months' time, in 90 days exactly, they came and told him he was free to go.
Wow! So that must have actually changed your life, because you're 5 years old, probably daddy's little girl.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
And you have 2 older brothers. You're the only girl. You're the only girl now.
I'm still the only girl. Yeah.
So your dad is gone.
Yeah.
I'm sure he was your rock.
Absolutely.
He's back into your life, and he's a saint now. He knows God now.
He actually, while he was in prison, after that night, he calls home and tells my mother what's happened. He's very excited to share with my mother that he has given his life to the Lord, and he encourages her to go out and find a church, talk to a pastor, and have someone lead her to the Lord as well. And as you can imagine, my mother was left behind with 3 of us. And before my father went into prison, they had a very lucrative business, a trucking business, and they were doing exceedingly well. When my father left, as you can imagine, everything fell apart. And my mother was left behind to fend for herself, us, and
3 children,
everything, the house, the bills, the business, all of it. And so my mother really, 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 really went through it. So when my father calls her and says, I'm a changed man, I found God, I want you to go find a church, have a preacher pray with you, and give your life as well, because things are going to be different. As you can imagine, she didn't think twice. She ran off to go find a church.
So even before your father was out of prison, your mom had already found the church. And so he was already pushing that
on us. Absolutely.
Okay. So your father comes out of prison, your family's reunited. Does everything get better right away? Or what happens next?
Well, actually, before he leaves, I didn't know that he was in prison. We were told that he was away working. They had a trucking business. It wasn't far-fetched for my mom to have said, your dad's off working. He did it all the time. They were gone working all the time. It just seemed that he was gone a little longer this time. He wrote us a letter before he got out. Right before he was going to be out, he knew that we were going to go pick him up, see where we were going to go pick him up. So he decided he would not let us go through that shock or surprise. He was going to let us know before we got there to pick him up at the penitentiary door. He wrote us a letter to tell us where he was at.
Okay, so I jumped up a little ahead on this story.
Okay.
My apologies.
No problem.
All right. So your father is out of prison now. You didn't even know he was in there.
We didn't know. We didn't know.
Wow. So your household is falling apart essentially. Right. You're 5 years old. You don't really know what's going on. Your father's gone. You assumed he was working. Yeah. You find out through a letter that he was in prison the whole time.
Right. We were away and working in West Texas. My mother was still working the business, doing her best to keep it all together.
Yes.
My brothers and I were outside playing outside of this little camp that we used to stay in when we were out there in West Texas. And the mailman comes by, drops a letter, a single letter, in our mailbox. We ran and we got it. My oldest brother was about 9 years old at the time. He sees it. It's addressed to us 3 kids. And so he tears it up, opens it, and he starts to read it. And we're hearing him. And it's my father apologizing, telling us that he's in prison.
Yeah.
We run into the house and we confront our mother because we have been told all this time that my father was away working. And so my mom sits back and, I can't imagine what she must have been going through. And then we throw this on her too.
She was already hiding.
She was already
all this, struggling with the finances and
everything,
doing her best to keep everything together.
Everything.
And then now the cat's out of the bag.
And we go and confront her, and she sits there and she's doing her best to kind of keep it together and tell us, listen, we were just trying to protect you. That's how that went. That's how we found out. We thought he was away working. We didn't know that he was away in prison.
Okay. So that day that you guys actually went to pick him up and you saw him for the first time in 3 months.
In 3 months.
Could you see that there was a difference? Was he a new man right off the bat?
Absolutely. In the letter, he had actually wrote us and told us. He was apologizing. He was telling us he had found God, that things were going to be different, that he was actually going to stop working so much and spend some time with us. He wasn't going to be chasing the almighty dollar as much anymore and spend more time with us, that he was a godly man now, that he had Jesus in his heart, and things were going to be very different. I remember he even promised us that he would never spank us again. He was, he must have felt, he was just so above and beyond repentant, that I remember the promise, he made several promises, and one of them was he'd never spank us again.
Wow.
And we reminded him of that one time. We actually did.
Yeah. So your father's out of prison, you guys have been reunited, and then your family finds a church, or your mom had already found a church.
Yeah.
So what happens next? You guys start going to church?
We quickly get very involved in this one church. It was a Baptist church, but it was a church nonetheless, and we were excited. We were brand new. We didn't know that there was organized religion. We just were excited to be all together again. We were. It was like a newfound life, Leroy. We were this young, and we could tell, we saw, we felt that it was a newfound life. And we quickly get very involved in this church. We were every Sunday morning, man, every Wednesday night we were there. We were the first ones to show up, the last ones to leave. My father volunteered for everything. We were super involved in this church until one night my father catches Holy Ghost fire, starts speaking in tongues, and we get booted from the church. We get thrown out of the church.
Hold on. I'm actually a Baptist.
Oh. Sorry. I'm non-denominational, man. I just love Jesus. That's it.
Well, so I grew up in a non-denominational church.
Right.
I understand what the speaking in tongues is and the Holy Ghost fire. And I can say that although I really do enjoy my Baptist church a lot, it's not common for things like that to happen at that kind of a church.
Yeah.
So these people were probably mind blown by your father speaking in tongues.
They were offended. Oh my goodness, Leroy. I remember the service came to a screeching halt, and they were looking at my father like he was crazy, like he had, like if he was demon possessed, man. They were looking at him like if he was a crazy man, and we were.
How did you feel, though? Well, what did you think when you heard that? I mean, did it not boggle your mind that your dad is suddenly speaking in tongues? Did you even know what that was?
No.
What did you think?
Well, I remember being 5 years old, and I remember seeing him. But my father was he came out of prison, reading the Bible like a pregnant woman eats food, constantly praying. He was always on his knees. He could quote you the Bible with it being closed and sitting on one of the tables. He could quote you the entire Bible. He came out on fire. Out so in love and wanting to know and reaching towards this God who had set him free. So we weren't freaking out, me and my brothers, when he was speaking in tongues. We were more freaked out with the way the church reacted. And that same night we were thrown out and never let back again.
What?
Absolutely, we were thrown out and we were never let back again.
Wow. Okay. Okay, and this is when you were 5. This is after 5.
I'm 5.
And then so you find another church?
You find another church. It was an all-white, non-denominational church. We were the only Latino family.
Where was this at?
In Edinburgh, Texas.
An all-white church?
All-white church.
In
Edinburgh, Texas. It was non-denominational, and they grabbed us up. We were the only brown-looking family in that whole church. But quickly, friends and family of ours, other Latinos, started to follow us and come with us to this church. So at some point, the church, I mean, it was a big congregation. It was an all-white congregation. The Latino side starts to grow. So the leadership of the church comes to my father, and they already know he's kind of doing some evangelizing.
Yeah.
He's in Mexico and preaching, so they already know he's already set to go. So they asked him to start an all-Spanish service in the evenings.
Oh, okay.
And we start out that service in the mess hall. But quickly, I'm talking about 3, 4, 5 months later, we were moving into the main sanctuary because to contain the crowd. I mean, it was growing at a rapid pace, yeah.
And at this point, you're about 9 years old?
I'm about 9 years old.
So do you start to get involved in the ministry? Right now, you're just kind of, you're along for the ride. Your father's obviously making things happen. Churches are growing.
Yeah.
Do you?
Well, what happens after that is that my father decides that he's got this calling, or he knows of God, he's got this calling.
Yeah.
So he goes to the leadership of the church, and they know it too. So he branches out on his own with their blessing and support.
Wow, okay.
And at this time, I'm only 9 years old. I'm not ready yet for any kind of real responsibility. But my brothers, before we branched out, my father had brought someone to teach them the basics and a few instruments.
Yeah.
So when we move into our own church, my father is doing all the preaching.
There's the band.
There's the band. My brothers my father is doing all the preaching. My mother would lead the praise and worship, and my brothers or the band. And in No Time Flat, these guys are musical. You know them. They're musical. These guys are talented, man. They took to it. It was like it just came natural to them. These guys are musical. They're so talented. They can play any instrument you throw at them.
Yeah, wow. So you're a couple of years older than me. Mm-hmm. I only remember growing up in church and seeing my cousins play these instruments.
Yes.
So it's kind of cool to hear the background, right? Because I don't know that.
Right.
That's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So the church is going. Your brothers are the band.
Mm-hmm.
You're not in the band.
I'm not in the band. I'm only 9 years old at this time.
Okay.
But then things start to grow and move and my father puts a children's church in place. He puts a youth night in place. He puts a women's service in place. There's an all men's. I mean, we had a group for just knocking on doors. I mean, it was a full-fledged church, man. It offered everything.
Wow, yeah.
And I remember one summer, I had just turned 12, and I was still actually young enough to be in the kids' church. Why I wasn't attending, I'm not sure. I think I was going to the youth, but I was still young enough to be in the kids' church. The kids' church ran from 3 to 12 years of age. When you turn 13,
so
you would go
junior
on.
High is the
yeah,
separation.
exactly,
Yeah,
separation, and you would go into the youth. And so one summer, the summer I turned 12, my father was on the way to church to pick up some of the kids who otherwise wouldn't have a way to get there, to get them to kids' church. And I told my father, I'm going to go with you because I know that three women ran it. One of them was out of town. I said, I'm going to go help the 2 other women, see if they need some help. I'm going to go assist them. Yeah, they're shorthanded. I'm going to go and volunteer myself out and, help out a little bit if I can. And my father said, okay, come on, let's go. We get there, and the 2 women that were there were so relieved to see me come in and say, I'm going to help you guys. Oh, my God, thank you. Yes, come help us. I went on working with them even after the main person came back.
Yeah, so you were purged from the being in the group to being helping.
I turned 12. I was brand new in my 12 years of age, and I was still old enough, and I went from being one of the kids to being one of the leaders in the, one of the, and one night, Leroy, we were on our way home after taking the kids on an outing, all the kids' church, and my father calls me into his bedroom, and he says, I feel of God to tell you to get ready because you're about to take over the kids' church. You're about to take over the entire children's church. And I said to him, oh, Dad, that's crazy. First of all, I'm only 12. I'm still young enough to be in the class. And if that were to happen, it'd be years from now. Yeah. Stop it. I giggle like that. He goes, listen, I just feel, God, that I need to tell you that. I don't know when. I don't know how. You need to know. I walked away. The Saturday right after, we're at the end of kids' church. And I'm inside cleaning up after, because I would just serve under them. That's it. I was just like a go for a run. And I was glad to do it. I love my job, man. The 3 women call me aside. They pull me aside, and the one that's in charge says to me, we want to talk to you real quick. We want to tell you, she says, that I'm quitting, and these 2 are going with me. And she puts her hand in her pocket, pulls out the church key, and says, here, if you want the kids' church, it's yours. And she handed it to me, and she walks away. And as you can imagine, my father's words come screeching back into my head, man. It was 8 days later exactly.
Wow. Were you scared?
I was at first. And then when she's walking away, she turns back and she says to me, you are a one-man show. You got this. You don't need anybody. You were made for this. It's yours. And she walks off. And I decided to put my big girl pants on and give it my best shot because it had been prophesied to me just 8 days prior.
Wow. All right, so I know this is not my story, but I do remember being 5, 6, or 7 years old and going to God's Little Children.
That's what it was called.
And you were in running.
Charge.
Yes.
I was in charge. Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize that you were only a teenager.
Exactly. I was 12 years old, and I was running the whole kids department for my father's church. Absolutely.
So I do recognize that there was authority there, and you, in my perspective, you were an adult.
Right.
You were only a few years older than me.
Yeah.
So that's pretty intriguing on its own right there. That at such a young age that you're in a ministry.
Right.
So what happens next?
It starts to grow. God enables me. He gives me. There's a calling, and I was calling. It grows in size. It triples in size. We take it to a whole other level. I'm 12 years old and I have 6 adults volunteering, working under me because we have so many children, and we're taking it to a whole new level. And we go working it, and time starts to pass by. When I turn 15, my father says to me, "Hey, we don't have a youth minister right now. You're gonna have to take over the youth as well." I said, "Okay." So I'm running the kids department since I was 12.
Okay.
I have six married women, mothers, adult women who work for me in the kids department. Now I'm taking over the youth. Then I came home from school one day. I'm a freshman. I come from school one day.
You're a youth, yeah.
I was a youth. I come home from school one day. My father says, "Pack a bag." He says, "We're gonna send you out of the country. You're gonna go help this pastor and this pastor and this pastor. They're up and coming churches, and they have no clue how to start a children's church and a youth church, a youth ministry. And you've got it. They've seen you work. They're asking for you."
Wait, hold on. I'm sorry. You're a teenager. You are in charge of people. You're running a children's group. You've taken over the youth group. And now you are leaving the country to help other churches build their youth groups
and their children's
ministries.
I wanted to picture them sitting there. I don't speak the language.
Whoa. So you're in Mexico.
I'm in Mexico.
And you don't speak Spanish.
Well, I don't speak Spanish. I mean, we speak slang. We speak a form, but it's not Tex-Mex. It's not Spanish.
No, it's not Spanish.
And so I wanted to picture that I'm sitting in these little makeshift churches, okay? And there's all these pastors' wives who are about to start to teach children and youth, and they're sitting there with their notebooks and their pens waiting for this. I'm going to call myself a little white girl because in a sense I am to them. I'm an American. In coming, I don't even really speak the language. And I kept telling one of my uncles who was actually living there at the time, running one of the churches, I would have to have him come in, sit down, and interpret for me. Because the Spanish they spoke wasn't the same Tex-Mex I spoke. And I was there, and these ladies would even come from miles around to sit there, to learn from me, from a kid, to go start these ministries in their church. And we did this several times to several parts.
Wow. Wow. What an amazing story. Actually, this is a great story. Your family has found God.
Yes.
Everybody's in the ministry somehow or some way. You're actually leaving the country to help other ministries. Life is good. Life is great. In fact, I remember growing up being a part of the ministry that you helped teach, and I enjoyed going to those
ministries
Saturday morning God's little children groups, and I enjoyed all that stuff, and watching my cousins play the instruments, and going to church and knowing everybody there, right? Everybody was related to me.
Yeah.
and even the people who weren't related to us were still almost like family.
Yeah, absolutely.
And life is great, huh?
In church, in the outside, it is. I many times got told, people would come up to me and say, "What must it be like to grow up with your dad as a father, man?
He's an amazing man.
He's an amazing man. What an anointed man. Wow, what's it like to never have known sin and yes."
I'm sorry. I need to say something about this man. My uncle Annette is if anybody has ever had a chance to hear this man preach, he is a very powerful, strong preacher,
Anointed.
speaker, anointed, and he throws a word at you and it hits you in the face, and it's actually I enjoy him. I enjoy going to his church, and from what I remember, he is basically the head of our whole entire family.
Yeah, my father is the oldest of 17 kids, and your mother is one of them, the ones in the middle.
Yes.
Yeah. My father is his mother's, their brother and sister.
Yes.
My father is the oldest of 17 kids. So essentially, like you were saying, everybody in the church was related because everybody started under my father at one point. Yes. He had been always the spiritual leader of the family.
That's what I was trying to point out. Yes, yes, and even with other uncles that I have who are also preachers,
and pastors.
They actually seem to submit to him.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
He seems to be the spiritual, and I like that. That's
like the strong man.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
So people often came and said to me, what must it be like? What must it be like to live in your home, to have your father as a dad, and you never have known sin, and you've been in church, your family gave their lives to the Lord when you were 5. What's it like? And I have to be honest, man. I don't know if my parents forgot that we were kids, Leroy, or if they didn't care. They were too busy trying to project perfect Christian pastoral family. My life in church was one, and my life at home was another one. We lived under so much abuse.
Now hold on, I'm sorry. From my perspective, that is not what I see.
Right.
And that is not what I'll ever understand.
We've had this conversation, you and I, and you can't, you don't capture, you hear me say it, you don't argue back with me, but it doesn't fit in your head.
It doesn't. It doesn't. I'm sorry.
I'm going to tell you something, that the life of a pastor's child is a life all on its own, man. I had a friend say to me one time, you guys are so hard. You have to understand, we are under the constant microscope. Not just the entire congregation, somebody who knows my father, and at that time in the valley and all through Latin America, there was nowhere I could turn and didn't know Ezequiel Morales.
Yeah.
Nowhere. And we were, and I think, and I know for a fact, I know for a fact that congregations forget that the pastor's kids are kids just like their kids, going through the same troubles, going through the same obstacles, having the same challenges, going through the same thing, because we're human in the end first. Before I'm my father's child, I'm a human, man.
Wow.
And I was a kid like everybody else's kid. And we were constantly under the microscope. And if we did any little thing wrong, if we sang a wrong note, if one of my brothers played the wrong note, if somehow we missed it, Leroy, it got to the point that I used to want church never to end because we were going to go home to a beating. And this was a constant thing. Listen, my parents went on to have I have 2 younger brothers. I have 4 brothers in total. And my parents preached the love of God on the pulpit, but it did not exist in my home.
You guys were always well dressed. Everything.
We were groomed well.
Yes. Explain the abuse. Maybe he was yelling at you too much because you weren't working hard enough. Do you mean that kind of abuse? Explain the abuse.
Yes.
I mean, everyone has their own perspective.
Yeah, he wanted perfection in church always. He expected perfection in church always, and no matter how much we were kids, Leroy, we were kids. We were kids, man. We were just kids. And he expected perfection from us at church, man. And no matter how much we gave, and we gave our all, man. When it came to church responsibility, he worked us to the bone, man. And we still had chores at home. And we still had to perform at school too. Leroy, I was 12. By the time I was 15, I had the children. I had the youth. I was going out of the country to help other churches build their kids' ministries and their youth ministries, and I still had to perform at school, and I still had chores at home. There wasn't enough. I lived constantly scared and nervous all the time.
So that's the abuse. It was a mental abuse. Was there ever any physical abuse?
There was. A moment ago, I did say that we used to go home from church to constant beatings. Beatings.
I know you said that, and I'm sorry. It didn't click. Yeah. So you mean physical beatings?
Oh my God.
With the belt.
You have no idea how many times I walked in. You all were sitting there in my kids' class. How many times I walked in wiping away tears, hiding bruises. You have no idea. You know what I'm saying? It was rough. It was rough. And my heart goes out to any person whose parents are in any kind of ministry, because their life is rough. Not only did the whole congregation and anybody who knew who we were expected perfection out of us. My father demanded perfection out of us, man. Yeah. And we didn't have a choice in anything. The one gratification, the one solace I had, the one peace of mind that I had was that I loved the ministry, man.
You still love God.
I loved it, and I was willing to take whatever they gave me to keep working those ministries. So when I was 18, I ran off and got married. Not because I was in love, not because I wanted to be with him, not because it was my life dream to get married and have a family. I did it to get out, to get away, to escape, man.
The abuse was that bad?
The abuse was... Leroy, when I was 15 years old, was the first time I attempted suicide. In my home.
What?
In my home.
You attempted suicide?
My mother walked in on me, and I had found a wire hanger, and I was jamming it into my wrist because I just couldn't take it anymore. I don't have, in so many words, I can't explain so much, but another thing that I was suffering was that my mother loved my 4 brothers, kissed and hugged and did for them, man. And she made sure that I understood daily that she hated me. My mother made sure every single day of my life that I understood that she hated me. When I was 12 years old, I walked into my dad's office one day and I said to him, "Dad, why does Mom hate me so much, man?" And my father said to me, "Come here." But I was daddy's little girl. He loved me. He sat me on his lap and he says, "It's because you don't understand. When we got married, I asked her for 5 kids, and she said, sure, so as long as they're all boys, because I'm going to be the only woman in this house." He goes, "And then here you come, and you ruin her dream." And you know what the strangest thing is about that? That I actually felt compassion for her. I felt bad for her, so I decided I was going to work harder at staying out of her way, because it wasn't her fault.
So there was abuse, physical abuse, coming from imperfections in your performance at church. And then there was another form of abuse coming from your actual mother.
Rejection.
Rejection.
I suffered a lot of rejection at the hands of my mother. I suffered a lot of rejection at the hands of my mother. So as you can imagine, me and my brothers were growing up real confused, man. Me and my 2 older brothers were in a constant turmoil because they preached the love of God on the pulpit, but it didn't exist in my home. They would tell you on the pulpit, be careful what you say to your children. Be careful what words you speak over your children, because you're prophesying over your children. But my mother never called me more than stupid and worthless. Never did she ever call me by my name. Ever. So, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Your parents are known throughout the community. Your father, through God, of course, brought back a man from the dead.
A woman.
A woman.
Do you remember that day?
Very powerful stuff. Right.
I remember that day.
These people were very, very plugged in with the Holy Spirit. And they know what they're preaching, right? And we all know that the words of your mouth are the most powerful
thing that exists in this world. Absolutely.
And in fact, I'm sure I've heard them preach that. But at home, you're actually being belittled, physically abused,
verbally abused.
Your brothers as well?
My brothers, yes. Me and my two older brothers were going through a lot of the physical abuse. So I was the one that was being rejected by my mother for some reason.
So that was an extra form of abuse.
Extra form.
So it's time for you to go. You're 18, you're getting married, and you're out of there.
And I'm out of my home, man. I left and
Do you still have Jesus in your heart at this point?
No. When me and my older brothers were old enough to get up and leave my home, we ran the opposite direction of anything that was Jesus, of anything that was God. In our minds, if this is the Jesus my parents are preaching, I don't want no parts of it.
Wow. It actually rocked your faith so much
completely,
that you turned from it.
Completely. I didn't want nothing to do with this Jesus and with this God that my parents were preaching. If that was God, if that was Jesus, I didn't want no parts of it. And when we were old enough to run away from them, we took off. We ran the opposite direction. We went as far away from Jesus as we could. You have to understand that we also grew up with this mentality that if we didn't see life through their eyes, we were out of God's will and condemned to go to hell. It was very cult-like. It was very controlling. And I'm going to tell you something, how the mind works, because we all ran off, me and my two older brothers, and got married, but somehow we kept coming back.
There's a level of control that your parents have over you, and they can somehow pull you back in.
Huge. And I remember being married and looking at our lives and our spouses now.
Can you explain that control? I'm sorry, because I don't understand it. If my parents, if I had a falling out with my parents, and they were telling me to come and do something, or to come and be here with them, or something, or whatever the case may be.
And you could say no.
I could say no and walk away.
Not us. Not us.
Explain that.
I remember being married, pregnant, out to here with my first child. And if my father picked up the phone and said, "You come here right now," even if I was busy, "Well, Dad, I'm going to this and that." No, you stop and you come here now. And I would tell my husband, "Let's go. We gotta go. We gotta go. Let's go. We were taught at a very young age that if we didn't see things their way, do things their way, we were out of God's will and condemned to go to hell.
Okay, so he is applying that mentality to your family.
On the level of fear.
Not the church.
No, there was a lot of it in the church too.
So that's why you're accusing or saying that this is a cult-like.
They're very cult-like. We have had this conversation, you and I. You're my cousin, we're family. We have sat back and we've had this conversation before.
Yes.
And when I walked away and I got a hold of the Bible and I would read it, it wasn't like the way he was telling it to me. Because now I had the Holy Spirit and I was looking at it and I would say, that's not what it says here. That he would use fear to control, to keep people, and that's very cult, and that's what cults do. They right away go to work on your mind.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And that's probably a whole another story that we could probably dig into. Yeah. I'm sure. But I think that as we continue to talk about your story. Some of those instances may be explained, and I think the cult word will make a little more sense as we talk more.
Yes.
So So you're married.
I'm married.
You're out of the house.
I'm out of the house.
God is not in your life.
God is not in my life.
Your father still has control over you.
He does. We still come around the house. We still even come around the church, but we're doing it more because it's expected of us, not because we have God in our lives. We would go every Sunday and every Wednesday because it was habit. It was habitual. I remember I remember leaving my parents, running off and getting married, but thinking today's Sunday, I gotta be there.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking today's Wednesday, I gotta be there. And so that went on for a while.
Yeah.
Until one day we just totally all of us we broke away. All of us, me and my two older brothers, just broke away, and we never looked back. As far as church, we had a relationship still with my parents, but we did not go to the church. We did not have a relationship with God. We were all living our own non-Christian lives, and we were content to live in our sin.
So what kind of non-Christian life are you talking about here?
We didn't have God in our lives. I had never, I didn't have a relationship with God. I didn't have a direct line with God. I knew of God. I knew of the Word of God, but I didn't have a relationship with God. I was living life on my terms. Yeah. We were living like any other worldly person was. There was no God in me.
Partying,
me and
drugs.
My brothers were hanging out, drinking. Mm-hmm. There were some drugs. We were clubbing all the time. We would take turns having a party at each other's house, and it was a way of life. And we were for the first time, Leroy, as crazy as it sounds, we were free. We were free. So I'm married. We have 3 children. My parents are constantly in my life, in my marriage. There was a battle I was in the center, and there was a battle between my husband and my parents. And one day I said, I'm done with one of them. I got divorced. And now I'm a single parent. 9 years later, one of my...
9 years of living the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah, not used to.
I was a single parent, but living the same way. Yeah, of course. Oh my God, yes. In the world, having nothing to do with God, drinking, partying, clubbing. Me and my brothers living it up. It sounds ugly, but we were so free, man.
Yeah.
We were free. It is crazy, but we were free. It was peaceful. It was like, it was good.
A false perception of peace, of course, exactly. Of course, that's not...
but for the first time, we weren't under somebody's thumb anymore. This, and then...
You're divorced.
I'm divorced, and I'm a single parent. Right before I meet my husband, my actual husband right now, I'm in an accident.
Okay.
And I messed up my back and my neck real good. It was a really bad accident. I mean, I got hit from behind so bad. It was the most horrific accident. But right before this accident, I would party a lot with my brothers. Mm-hmm. And every now and again, my brothers gave me my first drink. They gave me my first joint. They gave me my very first taste of drugs. Mm-hmm. I look at it today, Leroy. I look back. But this is me. I never would have given my brothers even just a regular cigarette. No way. How did that happen? Were we that lost? Were we that blind? I don't know. But they gave me my first taste of everything. And when I started to catch myself and see myself that I was looking for drugs more and more and more and more, I said, I have an issue, man. I wasn't addicted. I wasn't doing drugs every day, but I was noticing that if I could get something every weekend, I was drugging. I would stay drugged out the whole weekend.
Yeah. I
went to my parents, and I said to them on 3 occasions, I think I have a problem with drugs. I think I need help. I've been noticing. I've been catching myself, and every chance I get, I'm drinking and I'm drugging, but I'm drugging more. I don't drug every day, but I'm noticing that the cravings are there a lot, and as many times as I can a week,
you're reaching out.
I'm reaching out. And they looked at me like this, Leroy. And we're all sitting together as 3. It was just us 3. I went during my working hours. My kids were at school, and it was just us 3 in the house. And we were having a conversation, and I broke out with that. And they looked at me while I said it. Then they turned around and went on having their conversation. My parents, it's as if I never said anything. And I said, okay. Some time passed. I came and I tried it again. Same reaction. A third time, same reaction. At this time, they're still pastoring, but on a Wednesday night, they're having a smaller Bible study in their home. And I was noticing that every Wednesday, when my father would finish sharing the word, he would say, "Can I pray for anybody? Does anybody here need any kind of prayer? Can I pray for somebody?" And what's going on? They would say, "Can I pray for him?" He would get down and pray with them, Leroy. He was helping that person.
Yeah.
So I decided, I'm going to say it to him again in that Wednesday night, in front of everybody, where he's going to have to help me, like he's helping everybody else, Leroy.
Yes.
I'm asking for help. I can see that I'm craving the drug a little more. I'm reaching out for it more and more and more. I'm catching it. I need help. Those were my parents, the only spiritual leaders I ever knew. They were helping and saving the world. I needed help.
Yeah, and they could easily pray this away.
They said, "The devil is the devil is the devil is the devil, and every demon has to flee at the sound of the name of Jesus." So I went looking for that. And I remember I purposely sat there right in front, and I waited for. I didn't even hear what they preached, man, because I was in a hurry, Leroy. I was hurting. I was jonesing for drugs, Leroy, and I got caught myself, and I didn't want to go there. And I remember after he finished preaching, and I said, he started asking, "Does anybody need prayer for somebody?" Someone said, "I do." And, okay, he prayed with them. Somebody, "I do." Okay, and he prayed with them. I said, "I do, Dad. I need prayer for something." He says, "Oh, okay, sure. How can I pray for you?" And I said it again.
In front of the congregation?
Everybody! In front of everybody! I figured there's no way he can ignore me here. There's no way. How are they winning the world and forgetting about me? Because we lived at home too, Leroy. They were out busy saving the world, but forgetting about us. And I remember I sat there and I said to him, "Dad, I have a problem, I think, with drugs, and I need help." And I was telling him like this.
And he prayed for you, and he rebuked it out of you, just like he brought someone back from the dead, and everything was better again.
I was telling him like this. He heard me. He looked at me. He turned around and he says, "Anybody else? Can I help anybody else? Does anybody else need prayer?"
What was the reaction of the other people in the church?
I don't remember. I went deaf from there. I remember thinking, okay, oh well. I've tried. I don't know what else to do. And I was seeing that I was jonesing more and more for this drug. So soon after that, I was in this car accident.
Yes.
And I oh my God, my back and my neck were so messed up. I go to the doctor and he prescribes me this pill. And it was the beginning of the end. I remember taking that pill, man. And even forget my body, even my emotions were numb.
What kind of drugs are we talking about?
Opiates.
Opiates.
Pain pills.
I think everybody's all too familiar with the opioid epidemic that America is.
It's taken America by storm, completely. It is the biggest epidemic in America.
Yes.
Other than coronavirus.
Well, coronavirus is a pandemic.
Okay. Well, anyways, he gives me this pill, and I remember I took it that night, and I remember feeling numb, man.
Yeah.
I remember even my emotions. I remember thinking I have found the solution to all my problems. And it started out with taking one a day, but then one isn't enough anymore. Now I needed 2 and 3 and so on until it grew to the point, Leroy, where I was taking full-on bottles per day. And when that stopped working, I added a second opiate. And I went as far as I could until that stopped working, and then I added a third one. This is the second time ever that I'm going to say what I'm going to say next. And the reason I'm having a problem saying this is because my husband is sitting in the room. It's so bad to say it in front of my husband. But the truth is that following him more, and you're chasing that same high up your nose. And then that stops working. So then you start shooting them up your veins. And I did this for 10 years. For 10 years I slammed junk like that. I remember you telling me that for 3 weeks they gave you these heavy opiates and that you were going.
I understand that. Yes.
Can you imagine 10 years?
I know. I would probably would have died. Like a lot of people.
My husband used to come to me and he used to say to me, because I would sit in one spot on the couch and I would drug day and night, day and night, day and night, day and night. And it was so easy and it was so cheap to get these drugs because my doctors were giving them to me. My insurance was paying for them. When I would go visit my doctor once a month, they get paid to push these drugs. They're legal drug pushers.
Yeah.
He would say, here, let me give some samples. I would walk out with big, gigantic shopping bags of samples of these drugs that I was hooked on. And then he would prescribe me a list this big and my insurance paid for them. When Roland would tell me, stop drugging so much, I would say, what do you care? What are you paying a month? $100? Please. You have a great job. You're paying $200-300 a month. That's what it costs you to maintain my drug addiction. Stop it. It's just cheap. You're getting off easy. Stop it. And he even had a friend that would bring me, no matter how much the doctor gave me, it was never enough. We had a friend that would go across the border every 2 weeks to get his hair cut and this and the third, and we would order him a lump sum of junk, man, and he'd bring it to the house. And this was day after day after day after day. In late 2009, early 2010, Roland, my husband, says, let's try and maybe get you clean. Let's try and take you, maybe put you into a rehab. And I said, yes.
So you were, and you want.
I got tired of being the slave. For the first 5-6 years, he would say, you're a drug addict. And I would say, no, I'm not. These aren't drugs. And I wish everybody who's listening to me take note of this, man. A lot of the stuff the doctors are pushing are synthetic forms of heroin, baby. Listen to what I'm saying, man. Our doctors have been legal drug pushers. He would come up to me and he would say, why don't you try and get off, the drugs?
Yeah. And
depending on how the drug affected me that day, was back towards him. There was days that I would get mad and I would jump up and start swinging chairs and using my son watching him still at home. And then there was another day he'd come up to me and he would say, Mom, stop drugging so much. Listen, I'll help you. We'll do something. We'll figure something out.
Well, even your son is reaching out to you.
And I would start crying and saying, you're so mean to me. You're so rude. How can you be so heartless? Don't you see the hell I'm in? I'm in hell and there's no way out. Why are you asking me when I can't? Don't you see it's hopeless?
Wow.
It's hopeless. Stop it. Leave me alone. But at one point, my husband said, why don't we try rehab? And I was sick of being a slave to the junk, man. It's the truth.
Well, it's interesting that you say that because you grew up basically in a Christian. You grew up under the pulpit, or what's the expression?
I was born under the church bench.
You were born under a church bench.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You find freedom by cutting yourself off from that, from the church, which is actually more of a cult-like
It was very
situation.
cold, yes.
So you've cut yourself off from that. You've gotten married, divorced, remarried. You're addicted to drugs, opiates, some of the most powerful drugs in the world. And that freedom that you had claimed, that you had found when you left the church, has turned into you being a slave.
A prisoner. I went from one prison to the next. Absolutely. Absolutely, man. I went from one prison to another. I've always have said it.
Wow.
I've always have said that I left one to enter another one. Absolutely, man. I have always fessed up, and I have always been big enough to say it because it's the truth. I have never said that I was the victim, even though I ended up in drugs the way that I did. I did it.
So what was rehab like?
So my husband and I, my 12-year-old son, decide, well, let's go try rehab. And I said, yeah, let's try. I figured they can help me get off, well, then I'll get off because I can't do it on my own. There was no way, Leroy. It was hopeless. There was no way. The withdrawals were horrendous. I said many times that I would rather take a bullet to the head than go cold turkey, man. There was no way I was going to do that. So we go and try. We talk to my doctor. He puts us into one of the best facilities there where I live in the Rio Grande Valley. We go in there, Leroy. There was more drugs in there than I could get my hands on out here, man.
And they were probably free.
Oh, of course they were. It was a 5-star hotel, and I'm going to tell you how big this epidemic is.
But the rehab center was a 5-star hotel.
Absolutely.
And you got
drugs, man, given to me, handed them to me in silver platters. And let me just say something. I'm not here to put down rehab. Rehab has helped and has saved a lot of lives. I just walked into the wrong one.
I'm glad you said that.
Rehab has helped many people. A lot of lives have been saved because of rehab. I just walked into the wrong one.
Yeah.
There were so many drugs accessible there, man. It was a 5-star hotel. I remember thinking they couldn't. My husband and my son couldn't see me for the first 72 hours. I had to go through this thing, and I remember going in there, and they were treating my pill addiction with pills. It didn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
After about 72 hours, they came to visit me, and I sat my husband down, and I said, babe, this is not going to work. And he said, stop it. You're already in here. And I said, Roland, I'm going to stay in here. This is a 5-star hotel. I've got maid service. I've got food box. And all the junk I can handle. Oh, I'm going to stay, baby. But I'm just telling you right now, this ain't going to work. I'm a pill addict, and they're treating me with pills. Tell me what sense that makes. He says, you're staying. He goes, you're just telling me that because you want to go. I said, you know what? I'm not going to argue because it's not worth it. I was having a great time in there. Junk all day as much as you wanted. Everybody's walking around like zombies, man, drugged out. And let me tell you that I was in there 3 weeks, and I suffered my very first overdose ever in rehab.
Wow. 3
weeks in, I suffered my very first overdose in rehab. One day, as you can imagine, they were treating me with Suboxone, and Suboxone is a form of methadone. Well, so my body was starting to react, not having the other junk that I was having taken for so long. My stomach was having a reaction one day, and I couldn't eat. And they would give you so much junk in there that they had to make sure you were fed. Every half hour, they would come and check your whole vital because they were shoving so much junk down your throat. And so one day I couldn't eat, and one of the main nurses noticed in the evening around 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, she checked my chart, and she noticed I had not eaten one meal. She calls me out, and she says to me, I've called the kitchen. They're fixing you a plate. You haven't eaten all day. I said, I can't. My stomach is bad. And she was like, well, how is your stomach bad? I said, I'm a drug addict, man. I said, you've taken me off my regular junk, and you're giving me something else. My body's going to have some kind of reaction. I can't, I'm sick in my belly. I cannot eat. She says, you can eat. Nauseous, and my stomach is up. I cannot eat. Don't you get it? And she says, oh my God, fine. She goes over and she gets an immunization to combat the nausea. Well, I have been drugging all day long, hadn't eaten a thing, and that one shot she gave me put me over.
Wow.
I woke up 3 days later.
What?
I woke up 3 days later. They had to take me. I'm not sure how they put my stomach. I have no idea. I woke up 3 days later.
Wow.
In the hospital room.
Yeah.
And I remember I woke up and I remember what happened. I remember her giving me that, and I remember it started going dark. I knew what was happening to me when it was happening to me. So when I wake up in that hospital room, I jump out and I'm looking, and they have a nurse from the rehab there to watch me. And I run up to him and I said, "Hey man, what happened?" He says, "Oh, you OD'd. You know, that one shot was one too many to put you over."
Wow. But
they had called my husband, and they had told him that I had fallen and hit my head. They covered it up. But this nurse told me, and he didn't have to tell me. I knew what had happened. And I woke up, and I remember I grabbed the phone, and that person wouldn't let me use phone to call my husband, but I went and did it, and you know who I am, right? Then I told me what to do. I ran and got the phone and called my husband anyways, and I explained to him. He's like, "What happened? Are you okay? Did you hit your head?" And I said, "I didn't hit my head. I didn't fall. They put me over. I OD'd. I woke up in a hospital room this morning." And he's like, "No, yes, I did, Roland. But here's the worst part of it all. That was my first OD of many more to come."
And this is after 10 years?
This is already in my 9th year.
Oh, okay. This is a part of the 10 years.
This is already, yeah.
Okay.
I go home. It didn't work. I go home. I go straight to my stash. My husband came and got me. I went. It didn't work. Rehab didn't work for me. It didn't work. So I go home. I go straight to my stash, and I start drugging again, and drugging more, and drugging more, and drugging more, until one night we get into a fight, me and my husband, over, I have no idea what it was. We get into a fight, and I put him out of the house, and my son was only, at this time I think he was 16, and as you can imagine, he'd been living that life with me, year after year after year after year after year. My husband leaves, and my son decides to go with him, and I wake up one morning, and I'm looking around the house, and it's real quiet, and I'm thinking, well, my son and my husband must be out eating lunch, or maybe they're at the store or something. So I grab the phone and I call my husband, and I said, and he answers, and I said, "Hey," I said, "where are you guys at? Are you guys out there grabbing a burger or something? What's going on?" And he says, "What?" I said, "Where are you guys at? What's going on? Are you guys out there getting some lunch? What's going on?" And he says, "You threw me out of the house 2 weeks ago.
No.
Don't you? What?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" He goes, 2 weeks ago. It's been 2 weeks, and we got into an argument one night. You threw me out, and John Paul came with me."
So were you out?
Maybe. I don't know, Leroy.
Let me recap. I'm sorry, because we have touched on so many different aspects of your life. This testimony of yours seems to relate to so many different types of people, right? So just kind of let me recap, right? Your family finds God. Your life is turned around. You are overworked, overstressed. You're put into a situation that even some adults probably couldn't handle, as far as the ministry is concerned, and even being out of the country, speaking another language. You finally break away from what you discover is a cult. You run away into this marriage, this fruitless marriage. You've been divorced. Drugs.
Alcohol.
An addiction. Suicide. An overdose.
Many
overdoses. Rehab. What about prison, jail?
Yeah, I mean, as you can imagine, I was
of course.
I was carrying around so much hate, so much brokenness in me, that it didn't matter where I went. I always found somebody to get into everybody was either being rude to me in my drugged out mind.
Yeah.
Somebody had given me a dirty look in my drugged out mind.
So you've been in jail.
I have assault charges. I'd be jumping over counters to be beating up on the little girl at Walmart because I don't know what.
And what about Roland? Has he filed charges on you?
No.
Just kidding.
No.
I know your husband.
But let me tell you.
I'm just
But let me tell you what he did do.
Go
Can
ahead.
I tell you what he did do?
No, go ahead.
When we're on the phone call, and I don't realize they've been gone for 2 weeks.
Yes.
Right, because I'm so drugged out. I said to him, "Oh, so I threw you out?" "Yes, 2 weeks ago." He goes, "Are you this bad off? Are you this bad off?" He said, "Listen to me. I've tried with you. I don't know what to do with you." He goes, "I've come up to you and I told you that when we met, remember that God that you used to tell me about? And I told you, let's ask this God to help you." He would tell me, Leroy, there'd be times that before I threw him out, there were nights that he'd come up to me and he would say, "Mom, stop drugging so much, please. Mommy, please, look, I'll help you. I'll stay up with you all night and we'll kick it together. I'll help you. But all this time he was telling me with a bottle in his hand. It was an alcoholic married to a drug addict. I came, when we met, he had baggage, I had baggage, and we came and we combusted in the middle, man. And there was my young son watching everything. And he said to me, "You threw me out 2 weeks ago. Are you this bad off that you don't even know what you've done? It's been 2 weeks. You just now figured out we're not home." And I said, "Well, whatever. Come home."
Yeah.
And he says to me, "You know what?" He says, "I love you so much, man. I love you with all I got. If you'll just say to me right now that you're going to try, make an effort to get off the junk, I'll drop everything and I'll come home right now. Please, Mom, just say that to me." And I said, "Man, I will leave you first, always, before I leave this junk." And he says, "That's it, I'm done." He hung up the phone.
So failed marriage, now a separation.
Now a separation.
And your family's gone. Your own children have chosen
him
over you.
me. And yikes is the word. And some time passed, probably about a month passes, and I'm at home just drugging day in, day out. I'm not even sure, I don't have concept of time anymore. And then I get a knock on the door one day, and it is a process server, and he's come to hand me divorce papers.
Another divorce, okay.
Another divorce. He's come to hand me divorce papers. You know, Roland had, I guess, he had finally said, "That's it, I'm done, man." And he had tried everything, Leroy. He had tried everything, man. Roland was going to be with me at all costs. And I'm going to tell you something. If I hadn't thrown him out that night, he would have he would have been married to me till I would have killed myself with drugs. My husband, God bless him, he didn't know God, and he would have loved me to death, Leroy.
I want to touch on something real quick.
Okay.
Your husband didn't know God, but when he was pleading to you, he was telling you to pray to your God.
Yeah.
So even he knew that there was power there.
Yes.
And he was not a man of God at all. I just thought that was kind of intriguing.
No.
That somebody out of so much desperation would reach out to a God that they don't even know.
No. He had never set foot in a church ever.
Yeah. Okay. So what happens next?
So I say I will leave you first before I ever leave the junk. And he says, "Then that's it, I'm done."
He served you the paper.
He hung up the phone, right? He changed his number. So I had no idea where he was at, how to get a hold of him. I get served with papers. I remember it was a few weeks after that I had gotten served with papers that I finally got up, because they served me. I opened the door, they go, "Miss Garcia, yes, this is for you." I said, "Okay." And I closed it and I took it and put it on the I didn't even look at it. I'm not even sure how much time even passed to where I wake up one morning completely sober and I look over and I see the paperwork and I go grab it and I'm like, this guy, He's filed divorce from, he's going to divorce me, Leroy. You know what my attitude was? I wasn't church. I wasn't saved. I'm like, this guy's going to go and leave all this. Yeah, right. He's crazy.
Yeah.
I said, well, oh well. It is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's over. That's it. I'm done. I'm not. It's over. I'm not gonna stop drugging for him, for nobody. I can't. In my mind, didn't he understand that I couldn't? Did he understand that it was hopeless? I was in hell and there was no way out. They say that it is the hardest thing for a heroin addict to kick it. It is much, much harder when it's synthetic. And Leroy, it was hopeless. I couldn't quit. Even if I wanted to, I was done. I was tired of being a slave to the junk, Leroy. I didn't want. There were days I would cry and I would say, Roland, I'm tired of this. I don't want to do this anymore. And he would say, well, then stop. I'll help you. Look, let's ask the God. Let's ask the God who you would tell me about when I first met you. Remember, you would take me to church and you would tell me about this God. We can ask that God and to help us. You told me that God can heal you anywhere you hurt. And I would say, Roland, that God, he's forgotten about me, man. I have served that God since I was a little bitty girl. And look at my life. It's been a pile of trash. My life has been a lie. I have lived a lie, Roland. That God you're talking to me about has forgotten about me, man. Don't talk to me about that God, Roland. You hear me? Don't you ever talk to me about that God again.
But he's gone now. So what happened?
I'm sitting there and I see the divorce papers and I'm like, wow, this is real. And I look over to the little stand where I kept all my junk. I would sit in this couch and I have a little stand here. And I had all my junk, all my drugs, all my stuff, everything that was right here. And I was running low. And now Roland was gone. My dealer was his friend, wasn't going to come by anymore. What was I going to do? The doctor only gave me so many. I needed more than what the doctor was giving me. So I thought, well, I'm going to have to get up myself. And I'm going to have to go across the border. And I'm going to have to go buy, which I had done many times.
Okay.
Behind it, thinking I was doing it behind my husband's back. So I thought I'm going to have to get up myself and go across the border and go get a bunch of junk myself, right? And I've been asleep for days, I'm sure, because I was taking they were all downers. I would asleep for days at a time. I'm wearing pajamas. I sit up and I start to put on my house shoes. That's how drugged out I was. I was going to go in pajamas and house shoes, get in my vehicle and drive across the border.
If anybody knows First Lady Garcia, she's not the type of person to leave the house like that. So that's kind of. Yeah, you must have been in a really low place. If you were to leave, I mean, outside of the divorce, the failed marriages, the separations of the family,
so funny.
the everything else, the near-death experiences, and the loss of God, you were about to walk out of your house in sandals
and
pajama pants,
in pajama pants and house shoes.
That's low, man.
That's low, man.
Sure.
I don't even know how I looked, Leroy. I was gonna get up and walk out, man, like that, and drive across the border and get junk. And when I go to start put on my shoes, I hear a voice that says, if you'll give me a chance, I'll pull you out.
I just got the chills when you said that. So
I remember I looked up because I was done putting on my house shoes.
Yeah.
And I looked up because there was nobody there. It was just me. My husband had gone. My son had gone with him.
Yeah.
And I would look back around the room like this in the living room, and there was nobody.
Well, hold on. You heard it.
Heard it.
You didn't imagine it.
No.
You heard a voice.
I heard a voice.
In the room.
In the room. And I said, ugh. And I went down to keep on putting my house shoes on, and I heard it again. And all of a sudden the room is filled with this sweet, like a fragrance and a peace, and there's just this real soft, peaceful feeling about the room. It's like it was like experiencing love for the first time.
I'm getting the chills as you're saying that. That is powerful. So
And I remember I sat back and I would look around, and I would look around to see who was talking to me. And so I sat back all the way back, and I thought, what's that? And I kept thinking, did I take a lot of junk? I didn't know, was I having a stroke? Was I having an overdose? What was happening? Something was happening. And I kept hearing the voice tell me again, if you'll give me an opportunity, I will bring you out. I can heal you everywhere you hurt. I understand. This is what he said to me, Leroy. He said, I understand why you've fallen so low. I saw everything they did to you. I understand. I heard every word your mother ever said to you. I get why you've fallen so low. But if you'll give me one chance, I will bring you out. I will heal you everywhere you hurt. And I will make you a brand new person. He said, because I've got some people that I want you to go tell them that if I did it for you, I'll do it for them too. And I remember I was sitting there, and I would say, oh man, you forgot about me. I instantly knew who it was. There was a man, I couldn't see him, but I could hear him. And I would say, no man, you forgot about me. You forgot about me. Do you know what I've been through? And he says, I was there. He goes, I never left you. He says, I never left you. He says, and it didn't kill you. You're here. I was with you in every overdose. I was right there. Even when I wasn't trying to, because I tried committing suicide several times. Even I was taking so much junk. Even when I wasn't trying to commit suicide, I was trying to kill myself with all the junk I was taking throughout the day. He goes, I was there with you in every overdose. I was right there holding your hand. He goes, and I'm just here today to pull you out if you'll give me a chance. He said, I'm going to heal you. I'm going to transform you. I'm going to make you a brand new person, man. And I've got some people that I need for you to go and tell them that just like I did for you, I'm going to do for them.
Did it happen right away? Was it an instant fix?
I said to him, because I knew what I was going to go through.
Yeah.
As far as withdrawals.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I said to him, okay, Lord. I said, all right. I said, I will give you a chance, man. I will let you come into my life. I will turn around. I will bow my knee right now at the cross, man. And I'm going to give you all my life, all of it. I said, but I was making a deal with him. If you can ensure me that I will not go through the withdrawals, the stuff that I know I'm about to go through when I don't take anymore. If you will ensure me that you will keep me from that, I will turn my life into you right now. And he says, listen, just give me a chance. And I got down on my knee, Leroy, and I want everyone to listen to what I'm about to say next, man. Because I've always wondered, what happened with my parents? Why were there so many broken pieces? What happened? What happened? Why? If my Bible says that if I have not love, I have not God. What happened then? What happened? Could they have just used did they use God as anesthesia because they were in a bad place when they heard about God? Did they just say some words from the mouth? Because I'm going to tell you something, that I don't know what happened to my mom. I don't know who hurt her as a little girl. I don't know what woman crossed her as a child. Whatever she went through as a kid, something she was never able till today has she ever been able to overcome. You know what that means? That when she turned around and said yes to the Lord, she gave him some of his life. Because if she would have given all of her life, then my life would have been very different, and it wasn't. There's no way that I can sit here and say that I'm a Christian and I love God and I hate my child. There's no way, Leroy. There's no way. And I remember sitting there and I remember thinking, I'm going to give you my life, but I'm going to give you my entire life. And I remember going down on my knees and it was as if I had an imaginary box, and I shoved in it, and I shoved in it, and I shoved in it, all of it, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I gave him back, clear back to the very first memory I have, which is when I'm 3 years old. I gave it all to him, Leroy. And when I went down on my knees, man, when I was right there, I completely surrendered and gave him my entire life. He did a heart transplant, man. He took my heart of stone. He gave me a heart of flesh, man, a brand new heart. And he put in me a brand new spirit. When I came back up, I came back another person. It was as if they had turned the light switch on me. And the lights were on in my house, but there was a gloom, a dark, an oppression. But it was like if they had turned the lights on. Like when I came back up and opened my eyes, it was as if they had turned the lights up on me. And it was not an instant fix.
No, you had to.
I had to go through the withdrawals, and I understand why now. If I wouldn't have struggled through it, if I wouldn't have gone through all the withdrawals, and it took almost a year to finally get past all the 10 years of junk, all the damage I did, man, it would have been too easy for me to go back. It had to cost me a little bit. And not only that, now I can sit here and tell a drug addict, yes, you can. You can do it. If God did it for me, he can do it for you.
He restored your family, your marriage, your life. I don't think that the relationship between you and your parents has been restored, but your life as a person, you have been restored, and you are now living for God. It almost seems that you found God for the first time.
For the first time. November 30th of 2012. I found God for the first time.
Or God found you.
God found me, man, for the first time. November 30th, man, of 2012. I went down on my knees, one person, and came up another one, man.
It's a very, very powerful and intriguing story. It's a story that crosses so many different aspects of so many different people's lives. People who have had failed marriages, people who have had their families torn apart, people who have been addicted to drugs, or who have had to deal with people who are addicted with drugs. Because that in itself is a battle. Your testimony deals with people who have had to grow up under the pulpit, which is not easy. And I imagine there are thousands of other people out there who grew up just like you. Did I miss anything? Suicide? Rejection by your mother, of all people.
The cult and control.
Physical abuse, verbal abuse. That there are just so many different aspects of your life that you had to experience that God had simultaneously healed you up and fixed you up.
Yes.
Right? And there are people who struggle with only one or two of those things. So I think this is a good, positive story, and it gives hope to other people. So many people, yes.
I've often told my women, if you could sum up your life, as an octagon, some of y'all might have one broken piece and shattered, or maybe two broken sides of it shattered. My whole 8 sides, if I could sum up my life in an octagon, the whole 8 sides were not just broken and cracked, but completely shattered. And God came in, man, and started put together one by one by one by one. And I think it took maybe 3 months for the Lord to bring me and my husband back together. I spent all of 2013 withdrawing. Getting clean from drugs. Leroy.
It's a battle.
Leroy.
Yes. I understand that, yeah.
Leroy, suicide sounded better every night, man. Every night, suicide sounded better. Oh my God! I remember the first few nights when I was withdrawing. I remember thinking suicide, and I remember one night I said, I'm gonna wait till 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm gonna call my doctor to put me back on rehab, because what I wanted was for them to bring me down slowly, to make it more comfortable for me, because my body was begging for the junk.
You had to go through it the hard way.
Oh my God. And I remember that morning came, and I had taken a shower and gotten dressed, and I went and grabbed the phone, and I clearly hear that same voice say to me, the only one that's going to get any glory out of your story is going to be me. He says, Will, we're going to do it together.
That makes sense.
And I said, Lord, listen to me. And I started crying. I was crying desperately, man. And I was like, Lord, listen to me, man. I want to, but I can't. Don't you get it? My body is begging for the junk, man. Just let me go just for like 2 or 3 days, just to kind of like ease, to take the edge off. And he says, no. He says, don't you remember? They almost killed you in rehab. He goes, if I was right there with you, because you should have died many times.
Yeah.
But I held you. He held me. God kept me, man. God kept me, Leroy, because he had this day for me. When all that was happening, there was a separation between me and my parents, and I was angry at that more. Now me and my parents weren't in, my parents and I were not in speaking terms, but there was a separation, and I couldn't understand for a long time, even after giving my life to the Lord. I couldn't understand. I remember one morning in 2013, I was standing in the kitchen one morning making some coffee, and I was kind of angry and kind of bitter because I was going through the withdrawing. It was so hard. I didn't have my parents there. Everything was so messed up. My husband and I were there, and we're barely getting back together, and it was a struggle as well, and it was just so. One morning I woke and about how I had him, because I'm going through so much, man, just to serve him. It asked me this much, why? And he said to me, now that I have you here by yourself, I have separated you for a reason from everybody and everything, because now that I have you here by yourself with nothing and nobody and no, I can do in you what I have planned for you. And I sat there and I said, go ahead, do have your way in me. Do what you're gonna do in me. What do I have left? What I got?
Yeah.
Go for it, man. Do it. Go for it. And he made me into a pastor. I'm running.
And now you're sharing your testimony.
And now I'm sharing my testimony. And I never had any plans of sharing my testimony. But one of the definitions, man, of testimony is story of salvation. That's one of the definitions of the word testimony. It is a story of salvation. It's like I was telling you just a minute ago, when I was telling you, you can get into a battle with someone, but can nobody get into a battle with you over your own story? Can no one tell your story better than one thing that Greg Laurie said? Greg Laurie? Love that man. He's awesome. He's a major televangelist. He holds these humongous crusades out in the open. He said one time, there's one thing, only one thing more pathetic than a Christian without a testimony. He goes, and that is a Christian who has lost their testimony. He says, God gave you a story, not to hide it under a bushel, but to share it. And I want to tell you something, man. I have been told so many times to sit down and be quiet and don't share my story. When I knew that